Good Sunday morning. Welcome to WGN-TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnick. We begin this morning at City Hall. That's where Chicago's full city council will meet this week for the first time since July. The gathering comes on the heels of bad budget news from Mayor Brandon Johnson. His budget director announcing last week they're implementing a hiring freeze, limiting travel overtime for city employees. They're hoping that'll bridge the $223 million gap in the budget for this year. But there's still a $982 million hole to contend with for next year. Mayor Johnson says he's not ruling anything out when it comes to finding new ways to bring in extra cash.
As far as, what's on the table, as I said before, we have to discuss everything. See, other administrations wanted to piecemeal these discussions. I'm literally saying that with the people of Chicago that I love, we're going to open up the table to have a full discussion of what will be necessary in order to make sure that the investments that I've made, $20 billion of new investments in Chicago over the first 15 months, that those investments don't go away.
Now, what comes next are likely some tough choices on what the city can pay for moving forward. Meantime, Chicago Public Schools, they're preparing for its own budget deficit next year. The mayor and the teachers union want the state to pay for that.
We don't want to have to cut any services. I made that very clear. I've been an organizer, I've been an elected official, and I know the damage that has been done over the course of bad decisions. But as a city, we have to be prudent and fiscally responsible in this moment. Look, I've already saved the taxpayers $200 million. $200 million. But we have areas of need, not just in community safety, but education, working with our state partners. The state of Illinois has calculated $3.6 billion for school districts around this state, $1.1 billion for the city of Chicago.
Governor J.B. Pritzker's office argues state funding for CPS has already increased 14% in the last 5 years. The governor also said this week the mayor hasn't reached out to him to ask for help. With the fall veto session coming up in November, there's no plans for the state to step in.
I know how difficult this situation is, and I certainly sympathize with it. The state of Illinois provides billions of dollars to the city of Chicago every single year, and we're going to continue to do that. But we can't just, snap our fingers and somehow money. We don't print money at the state level, as you know. They do at the federal level, but at the state level, we can't do that. We just have to make sure we're, getting through these difficult times.
Well, the mayor is supposed to present his 2025 budget plan in 1 month. 6th Ward Alderman William Hall was tapped to lead a subcommittee on revenue last year. He joins me this morning to talk about what might be ahead as the budget debate begins at City Hall. Alderman, good to see you.
It's good to be seen.
Alderman and Reverend, I should say.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, one of the cuts in terms of the hiring freeze that was put into place last year was to include police and fire. The mayor backed off and exempted them. Was that the right thing to do?
Well, absolutely, it was the right thing to do. We need stabilized, safe communities. I want to make sure that we recognize Superintendent Snelling, who's done a 5-star job. In particular, my 3 commanders, Commander Tate, Branch, and Commander Courts. They are using every resource in CPD right now to keep our community safe, and they've done a great job. Don't change the formula.
The reality is that the budget is pretty much already baked in, right? You got 80% of it that's going towards city property of the property taxes, which goes to state-mandated pension obligations. So how much room, as your subcommittee looks at this, how much room do you even have to play with?
Well, at the end of the day, the state needs to stop playing with Chicago. We generate the most revenue to the state, and we need economic reciprocity. We talk about we hear the governor mention is billions, but yes, it takes billions to run government. And right now we need a surplus from the state to help fill the gaps that are being presented, especially in education.
So, the pressure of incoming immigrants and homeless, that's still going on. And the mayor's hope that the Bring Chicago Home provision would have passed, the initiative, that didn't happen. That, in his views, his numbers will cost about $100 million. That's not coming in. What's the impact from your work?
Well, one of the things is, number one, we're seeing shelters close. We're seeing the exit of migrants. There's still remnants of the chaos a year ago. We need federal reimbursement. But if the federal government doesn't reimburse us, in the meantime, again, we look to the state. When the state got out of housing migrants, we stayed in. When the state decided that they wanted to do this, do that, cut, we still, again, stabilize the city by providing 3 meals in a shelter, in addition to helping the unhoused. The formula hasn't changed. Taking care of Chicago is a priority, but again, we need more help from federal and state for a migrant crisis that Chicago did not choose.
So one of the things you did as chair of the subcommittee that you are running is you surveyed the members of your committee. You gave them 16 potential taxes or fees get the pulse from them about what they thought. And I have to say, some of those things like video poker, slot machines, alcohol, those kind of things, people could look at and say, well, that's optional. You do that if you want to.
Absolutely.
Not all the taxes, though, would avoid causing pain for people.
Well, first thing I want to be clear, any good leader listens. And so I just want to listen to my colleagues. These are trends that are happening in every major city across the United States. Of course, none of my colleagues, including myself, was in favor of any taxes. But again, when we look at video gaming, that's a revenue in which it helps a local economy. Video gaming is a plus for local bars, local community. Secondly, when we look at the river, it's $1 billion opportunity. We are literally behind the 8 ball when it comes to digital. You look at New York, you look at Los Angeles, major markets. Again, Chicago has a major message. And then last but not least, we must look at luxury taxes. For example, we have boats on boats on boats in the river, at the different harbors. And so we must look at different forms of revenue without breaking the backs. Luxury taxes and surpluses are, again, is something that makes government move. But again, we're not looking at trying to break the backs. We're looking at figuring out ways and streams of revenue that doesn't hurt the 9 to 5 Chicago.
But I believe also on your list, I want you to expound on this. I mean, city sticker increase, congestion tax, income tax surcharge. Those are things that will affect everybody. I know one of your missions is to not cause pain for the everyday Chicagoan.
Yeah, none of those ideas are moving forward. Again, it was just simply a survey. What we have done, though, sat down with budget, finance, both Chairman Irvin, Chairman Dowell, and myself. We looked at a formula that allows vetting to take place for individual aldermen. And so, again, the different ideas are now coming forth. They will go through, looked at through the legal lens, looked at procurement lens, and just every lens possible to make something come into fruition. That's the first time in Chicago history that has happened. I'm grateful to lead that effort.
One of the things I think might have confused people, the grocery tax, right? And J.B. Pritzker, the governor, took a lot of pride in saying we got rid of the grocery tax permanently. People, oh, that's great. What people didn't understand potentially was that money was going right to the municipalities. It was a pass-through to come right to you. Well, with that gone, the question is, given your mission of this upcoming debt, are you looking at the grocery tax?
And again, I think that this is a dangerous political game. You take away the grocery tax in the year for 2025. What about 2026? And so it's, again, passing the buck, passing the headlines. And so to take away that revenue, the question I have for the state is where they're going to generate the revenue that they, again, took out of the state budget, which then impacts us. And so now the mayor looks like the bad guy, right? Who's still taxing groceries? The mayor. But then the mayor is also moving in the direction of city-owned grocery stores, ran grocery stores rather, to, again, alleviate the food deserts that we have in Chicago. And so the state ledger and the state calculator is really becoming difficult for the city. And so we need economic parity that includes direct investment, because if you take away the revenue from the city, the state cannot be sovereign.
When the mayor was campaigning, he talked about bringing in $800 million in new revenue, a variety of ways of doing that. But I think he was referring to things like the financial securities tax, reinstating a corporate head tax. That one got killed under the Rahm Emanuel administration. How is that alive with your committee?
And again, taxing right now, you got Jill Jaworski, you have Chase. That's their job, to look at what taxes are relevant, what taxes we need to phase out. That's still under forecast. They're still looking and projecting to the future. But let's also look at one that's really prosperous, gaming. We have a new, for the first time, casino in the city of Chicago. Bally's has their hands in the idea of video machines outside of the casino. And so we need to revisit that conversation. Chicago can be one of the leading industries in gaming. Gaming hasn't hurt anybody. And again, there are people that don't want to go to the casino but want to walk down the street. That's $1 billion opportunity that, again, doesn't hurt taxpayers. And so we must examine ways to generate revenue and not just taxes.
One of the things that always sounds good to the average person, we're going to go after the high earners. We're going to go after the businesses and the large corporations. And, head tax is sort of like that. Well, money for each employee in the corporation. But would that create concern for you in your role of your subcommittee of saying, wait, that can send businesses out of the city and that could keep businesses from moving in the city?
There's no tax that's going to be moved unless there's a study. So there's no subject matter hearing planned for that tax.
Do you have that much time?
But what we don't have is time for political games. Now, what we must look at is this. When we look at corporations, when we look at those who are upwards and making well over 7 figures, their fair share, they depend on firefighters to keep them safe. They depend on teachers to educate their children. They depend on police. Those are direct investments from taxes. And so for the rich, the famous, and corporations not to pay in taxes but depend on police, fire, teachers, and other city subsidies, invest in the city. Invest in the pension of those who work so that they can have an opportunity. And so, again, no one's saying don't be rich, but what we are saying is invest in those that allow you to enjoy the same comforts as everyone else in the city.
You've got your pulse on things. The mayor has always said he's not going to increase property taxes. That was a campaign promise. The media looks and says he seems to be backing off of that now. What's your view?
Well, the first thing is this. When we look at property taxes, that's Chicago Public Schools. They set the precedent for that. Again, public schools schools pass the budget without the biggest item in the budget. I've been pastoring for 11 years. I don't think you can pass the collection plate unless you have a need for the expense to be paid for. So CPS needs to do a hard look at their financial structure, because the gap in this budget right here, and even some of the shortfalls, is because pension bills have not been paid, first at the state level, then second at CPS. And so then again, to look at property taxes, CPS already has set what they want the property taxes to be. To add on to that, that's to be determined.
All right, we look forward to your report with the budget numbers coming out in October. So thank you, sir, for being with me.
Thank you so much, Paul.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Alderman Reverend William Hall, the 6th Ward. Thank you. We're going to take